I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Alicia Jarboe. Alicia joined her husband, Justin, in real estate full-time in August of 2016. She came from a high-end millwork and construction company, which she worked for nearly a decade. So, first of all, Alicia, thank you for coming on the podcast today. I'm really excited to get to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited too. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And, we talked a little bit about before we started recording and in your bio, I know you worked, we're both, you live in Massachusetts. I'm from Massachusetts. So we have that New England connection, but maybe just give us some of your background, go back to however long you want to kind of set the story, and then we'll kind of go in from there.
Yeah, for sure. So my husband and I have been together since 2005. Feels like forever and just yesterday. And we kind of both came from different households that manage money differently and just different homes, which is fine. And we started, we bought a condo together and started a joint account and all that. And then when we made the decision for him to go into real estate, a very active decision. So no sympathy here, right? But you don't get paid right away when you're in real estate. So we went through a time where he wasn't getting paid, and then some of our other expenses had doubled. So things like my company at the time had stopped paying portion of the medical insurance because their company was going through a hard time. So some of our expenses were enormous compared to what they had been, and then minus an income. So you can see how quickly that becomes a problem. We eventually ended up losing our condo, moved out before an auction sale. I was very much adamant about let's be out. It was a really tough time. I mean, there were things you'd come home with like rubber bands tied to the doorknob with notices and things like that. It's really traumatic. And if you tell me like, you're going to go through this, I would have been like, put me in a padded room. Like I'm done. Like I'm not gonna be able to do that. In retrospect, it's probably, silver lining. Like we can sympathize with real estate clients now and things that they might be going through, whether they're trying to short sale or they've been foreclosed on before and things like that. So I think there's an empathy there that can be really helpful for people. So kind of from the crash, we actually did get sued from the bank for the deficiency, which, we've been in real estate for a long time and I've never heard that happening. We were actually sued for the deficiency for like tens of thousands of dollars, which really sucks. So we settled with them negative, our life was like negative on a balance sheet if I had been doing one at the time. We went through some Dave Ramsey things like debt snowballing and trying to get all that stuff clear. So by the time we had, been foreclosed on, lost the house, started renting, we were able to pay off everything else. So we've been debt free for a real long time. After renting for a while, we knew we couldn't buy a straight investment property because you can't do that for 7 years. Is that 7 years? I think that one's 7 years. So you can buy a owner occupied investment property and not, don't call it an investment property, but within a few years. So we did that, renovated the crap out of it, learned a lot of things on the way. So kind of house hacked our way through that. In the summer of 2000, would be 19, I guess, before COVID. We were living in a third floor 3-bed, and Justin goes, "Hey, that's my husband." He goes, "Oh, those people that are moving to the first floor, like these other girls just came through and like they really want to rent here, but we don't have a unit." He's like, "How do you feel about moving into the studio?" And I said, I don't feel good about it. Like we have I think he was 4 at the time. We have a 4-year-old and 2 cats, and the 450 square foot space sounds traumatic. And so I agreed reluctantly, and I gave him a deadline. I said, by our birthdays, because my birthday and our son's birthday are in November, I said, by our birthday, we need to be somewhere else. Like we can't stay here. So we were out by then, bought some more properties, house hacked the next one, and then kind of moved across the street, bought some other stuff, and it kind of been rolling from there. So I had given notice. To back up a little, I had given notice at my job in this, when you said the summer of 16. So I came over. I was there a few days a week because I'd only been back at my other job a few days a week after we had our son. And he calls me and he's like, dude, like, I think we just have to do this full time. Like, I don't think, I can only take you part time. Because, right before I started, he called me at my company and said, my admin left, like it was her last day, like after her 2-week notice, and I had a buyer agent and he's no longer wanting to be on a team. So you can come now or I'm not going to ask anymore, is what he said to me. Because I'd had my license for a couple of years. Like, I'm just not going to ask anymore. Like, this is it. So went home that night, wrote up my, my see you later letter to my company, sat down with my CFO and just kind of slid across the table. And I was like, this is it, like do or die, right? Like, you make money or you don't make money. No one's paying you to do this unless you do it. So that was kind of a trial by fire. And then he was unavailable for 4 days. I think after my first full 3 days, he was gone for 4 days in the Grand Canyon, unreachable via cell phone, email, anything. And he had 18 deals under contract. So very much trial by fire. But it was great. And so I've kind of maneuvered and changed roles and things in the company since then. But it's been a really great decision for us, a really great decision for me, but definitely tough coming from negative everything to kind of where we are now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think there's always a lot to be learned from like things that happen to us in life that at the time, I'm sure you weren't like, this will be a great learning lesson someday.
Right.
That's never the feeling when you're going through something like that. But it is interesting. And one of the things you mentioned that you kind of went down that Dave Ramsey path. And so I feel like, so you see a lot in like the real estate world, some people will even sort of, I think, mock Dave Ramsey a little bit, just in the sense that like the two things you see is like, okay, Dave Ramsey didn't get to be Dave Ramsey by doing the things that he said necessarily. Like there's, to some of it, it's sales, but the other thing is like, he talks about being debt free, but if you actually want to be an investor in real estate, you use debt to your advantage and all that. So there's
healthy debt. Yeah.
Right. So but it's like what I think when people are kind of, sort of jokingly talk about that stuff, what gets missed is when you're in a situation like you guys were in, then that other stuff, then the healthy debt, then the investing, it's not even an option really, right? You have to start somewhere. So that's when that, the Dave Ramsey techniques, I think, are very applicable to certain people in certain positions, right? So it's like once you get to the point where you are comfortable and you're actually considering, the investor mindset, well then, yeah, so you're going to change from there. But to get out of a place of debt and things like that, I think that the Dave Ramsey stuff makes a lot of sense. Would you mind talking a little bit about that, kind of what you all went through to sort of, I don't know, get yourself back above water, and how you use that? Because I think that's really valuable to people. I think people probably listen to podcasts and stuff, and if you're not already an investor, a lot of people are going to think, well, I can't do that. Like I'll never get into real estate because I have $20,000 in credit card debt or whatever the case may be. So I want to talk about how you started that process, your initial mindset when you were going through this with, your house and as you said, sort of expenses ballooned quickly. Mm-hmm. And then we'll talk about kind of, okay, now once we got that under control, what do you do with your mindset? So maybe start back there.
Yeah. So I'll back up to Dave Ramsey. So it was a kind of an interesting story where Justin had gotten a phone call from an old classmate from high school. Like they weren't super close then. They just, in passing knew each other. Probably had mutual friends and hung out a couple of times, but definitely weren't close, hadn't been staying in touch. And he gets a random phone call and he goes, hey, how you doing? And when we were going through everything and he goes, it kind of gives me chills to think about it. I forget this story sometimes. And he goes, yeah, like we're doing fine. Like you don't want people to know, right? Like that you're like, how's dinner going? Or, how did you drive home on E because you don't get paid till midnight or, any of that kind of stuff. Right. Or did your card get declined at the store? Stand at the back of your friends in the coffee line because you don't want to pay for everyone. And so his friend calls like, how you doing? Oh, we're good. And he's like, oh, I just felt really like inclined to call you. And he's like, okay. And he goes, what's your address? Like, I'm going to send you this book. So he sends him a Dave Ramsey book. And we read the book and he's like, okay, like we're going to debt snowball, start paying things off, like smallest to largest. So you get wins no matter the interest rate. I know that's really hard for people. And to what you're saying, I think the Dave Ramsey program, or however you want to call it, the debt snowball, the 9 steps, whatever, to buying a house or paying off your house and saving for college for kids and all that stuff. It does work for a large portion. It would, if people did it, a large portion of the population. I think there's definitely people who it would benefit, no offense to anyone, but there is a very large portion of the population that can't handle a credit card, that shouldn't have one, that uses it and can't pay it off and buys things they can't afford. And if you can't afford it, you shouldn't have it. I don't mean that in a mean way, but that's how bad things happen. Yeah. And so we started doing that. I'll finish that story, but that guy, he called one day and he's like, how's it going? And it actually wasn't going well. And Justin had the same feeling to call him and ended up helping him. And they ended up going through one of our, we run a nonprofit partially from this, but, and we teach the Dave Ramsey financial peace course. And he had actually come to one of them. And we found out at that time, years later, after he had sent us, the book and everything, that he was going through, a hard time and had needed to be touched as well. So it was kind of an interesting, weird world thing. So back to that. So we started to pay off debts. We knew that cars were important to driving to work, to driving to business. So those were things we never defaulted on a car. We ended up paying them off pretty quickly after we lost the house, just because it's like, well, we could lose a house, we can figure out where to live, but if we lose a car, we can't make money. So that was a decision that we made. After paying off debt, and it was just renting, we really stuck to a budget. I've kind of always been a saver. I'm like, put something on the credit card, pay it off, put it in the budget. Like I'm still like that to an extent. But I refused, like I would write the budget for the first probably like 6 months we did, I would write it. Like, here's what we want to do this month. And then I just wouldn't reconcile it. I just didn't want to look at it. And it wasn't like, I didn't think we were doing anything wrong, but it's like, if I look at it and it's bad, then I feel bad and I didn't want to do it. So it was this vicious circle of like, well, next month I'll write it, but I'm not going to look at it. So it's like, here's what we want to spend on gas. But at the end of the month, I'm like, I don't know what we spend on gas. I don't want to look at it. And I was kind of a jerk about it, because he has not always been a saver, but he was the one kind of like, we're reading this book, we're going to do this thing, we're going to do this. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll write it, but I don't want to look at it when it's done. Like, I was kind of a jerk about it. So then we are hardcore budgeters. It was on paper at first. We are still very adamant budgeters to the penny. We payroll ourselves, so I know exactly what that number is, and our business expenses are, fully separate from that. But if it hits and it's something with 59 cents, like all of it goes in to the penny. If there's extra in the month, it gets rolled over into next month. If we're at a deficit, the negative goes into next month. So we have to figure out something, next time. So budgeting was a huge piece of it after the debt was paid off, because that kind of keeps you in check. And it's not meant to be, Rachel Cruz's daughter talks a lot about this, but it's not meant to be restricting. It's meant to be freeing. And it took me a really long time, and I still struggle with that now to get there, because it feels like, well, you can only spend X. You can't spend whatever you want. Well, the thing is, like, if you want to go get coffee 5 times with friends this month, just put it in the budget and you can do what you want. But it feels restricting, and I had trouble with that at first. So now we just include blow money in our budget, and it's, here's your money, you do what you want. If you want to go to Starbucks 20 times, or you want to go out to lunch, or you want to, whatever you want to do with it, that's your money to do what you want. If you need summer clothes this month or summer, like, it goes in the budget. So there's no surprises. Things like Christmas aren't a surprise in November. It happens at the same time every year. And he says that in all of his conferences, like, Christmas isn't a surprise, your birthday's not a surprise. Right. And very little in a budget is a surprise. Fun fact, we actually still have our original $1,000. That's like step one, is $1,000 savings, like emergency fund with Dave Ramsey. And we still have it in an envelope. We both signed and sealed. We were going through the, terrible time in our life. And we went back and looked at it one day, and I was like, wait, it was on our wedding anniversary that we like signed and dated this envelope, and like double enveloped and sealed it, like, never touch this unless it's a real emergency. And I was like, oh my God, we were in such a bad place that I don't even remember that it was our wedding anniversary. Like, we weren't going out to eat. We were sitting in an office on the floor, putting money in an envelope. That's what we were doing. Not drug money. Like, it was hard earned, like, we don't want to put this money in an envelope. Like we could do things with this. So that was kind of, it was years later when I realized that too. And it hit me a different way, being like, wow, that's where we were on our wedding anniversary. Go ahead.
I think I like that you said that it's freeing rather than restrictive, and it's true, but you do have to change how you think about it, right? Like you have to try and change the mindset attached to that, and you have to commit, right? Because it either is important to you or it isn't, and it's like you're right. There's many people that have credit cards and sort of bad debt tied to that, and I was one of those people. Like I did that for a long time, and it was just like you're the unwillingness to, sort of go without for whatever reason, and you're not talking about going without food. You're talking about going without, new clothes.
Stop going to dinner and stuff.
Right. Exactly. Like things that you don't need. And it's just a lot of times people I think are just caught up in this. It needs to look like I can afford this stuff to other people. Like, I really think that's what it comes down to. It's not because at the end of the day, like, do you really need that? No. But if your friends are all doing it, then you want to do it. But the fact is probably most of them can't afford it either. And everybody's just trying to impress the other person. So, and
it's like Facebook, right? Like everyone shows the best of the best. Like, look at all these things with the zoo we did with my kid. And like half the time you were like, get over here. What are you doing? What are you touching? Like if you're not posting that on Facebook. And I think, when you're kind of on the other side of it and you realize there's more to it than showing everyone what you have, I think you're definitely like, you see something on someone's Facebook and you're like, can I just see your balance sheet? Like, what's your payment on that? Like, you know what I mean? It's less about, oh, look at that cool car and look at this cool thing. It's like, right, but what's your credit card balance? Or,
right.
How's that
or do you even
you?
own that car? Like, right. I mean, there's so much, kind of that's not even actually real, but, and that's the point, I guess, that I'm trying to make, is that if you can, it's probably the biggest thing is moving past the feeling of I have to look a certain way to other people. Right. And you don't want to look like you can't afford something, right? That's like, for whatever reason, we feel shame about that. But the fact is, it's like, if everybody did that, we'd all be in a lot better place. We weren't all trying to like impress the other person by showing what we can afford, then you don't have all these, millions and millions of people that are in debt they can't handle and all of that. So that is where that, sort of Dave Ramsey program can help you get out of that, hamster wheel of just like, oh, I'm living to show people that I, have made it, or whatever whatever that situation is. So it's very interesting, kind of perspective, and it's not talked about a lot, I think. So you went through that, you did the budget, you had your emergency fund and all of that. And and maybe you haven't completely transitioned out of that mindset, but how did you then kind of move from that to, okay, now we're buying these rental properties and things like that? Because I don't know, I guess maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming you weren't buying them all with cash, which is
correct.
Some of what, sometimes what he suggests is that you should, sort of, or never have more than a 15-year mortgage or all. So how did you?
So that's where we deviate a little bit from Dave. So, like I said, I think it is, that's why, a lot of people can take the next portion of this with a grain of salt, the next 2 minutes. But so while that program works for a lot of people, a majority of people could benefit a lot from that program of limiting, what they spend their money on, or, giving themselves freedom on the things that they really need or want, writing budgets and clearing up debt and, not having credit cards. I think there's actually a very small portion of the population that can manage credit cards properly. And there's probably statistics to back that up, not just me saying that, but
no, I'm sure there are.
Like everyone, paying interest on it and rolling, money, every single money, every single month paying more money. So we've not had a 15-year mortgage where the prices are, or, where he's from, buy a $150,000 house. You can't, like where I am. And I know some people would be like, we'll just move, let's, family. There's a lot more to it than that. And I know there's people have some really easy answers to fix that. That just aren't feasible for everyone. so we deviate a little from that. So we don't have a 15-year note on our personal residence. We only bought our first actual single family that we lived in less than a year ago. And I'm near 40. So that was a big deal. We're in our house and I'm like, I have a deck. I have a window over my kitchen sink. Like, what is going on? So that's been really interesting. Like, a garage is attached to my house. That's been fun to kind of go through that for the last year. But so we bought our first investment property, our first, house hack with a 3 or 3.5% down FHA 203K renovation loan. It needed a good amount of work. I remember Justin, we had been in real estate, or, not me for very long, but he had been in real estate, and we went in and we had our offer accepted before we had seen it. And we liked the neighborhood. We wanted to buy in this area. And we walk in and we walk in the unfinished part of the basement, because there's a studio on the other half where we lived for a little while. And we walked in the basement and I was like dodging cobwebs and trying not to fall down these rickety stairs, and the smell of mold and fieldstone basement. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, what did we do? Like, we're under contract now. Like, what are we doing? And he's like, I just looked at him and he looked like a kid in a candy store. And he's like, I'm so excited. And I was like, why? This place is gross. Like, why are you excited? So that was kind of our first foray into that. We ended up, getting a contractor and renovating the crap out of it. It's actually worth substantially more now than it was then. We rent it for a good amount of money. And then Justin had this idea of like, why don't we just furnish the studio when we move out? And I actually make more money on that studio furnished than I do my 3 beds, because it's furnished, and, we have traveling nurses and we have a baseball coach in there right now and stuff. That's like, 3 to 6 months, and they pay the utilities and pay all the money for furniture. So that building's actually a slam dunk now, and probably the last, if I sold them, it'd be the last one I'd want to sell, just because it's a 4 unit, it makes a lot of money. And then the next house we house hacked. So it was purposely, even though you're married, you can do an FHA owner occupied in your individual name. You can only do it once, but your spouse is not included in that if you don't put them on anything. So fun fact. So we house hacked that with a 203K. The next, we bought a few more, one of which I house hacked because his name was on that one. So that one was technically in my name. And then we, moved into that one. We lived in both of them for long, actually a pretty good amount of time. Because we just moved out of that other one the end of this month, a year ago. So we were there thankfully moved there fall of 19 before COVID, because I would have not been happy in a studio, being at work, or not, not having work, not having school, and being stuck in the studio. So thankfully moved out of there. So we did house hack twice with the low down payment. The other 2 we bought with a partner and then bought the partner out. So we did have to come up with 25% on that, which was a good amount. But I think, we made some different sacrifices to come up with that too. Like, okay, here's what we got to do with this. We got to move this money around. We got to make more money in our business to pay ourselves, rental money from over here to do this. So there was a lot of finagling to make that happen. But we were able to buy him out sooner than any of us really had agreed to or thought we could. So that was great to do that. So house hacking is a great way. I know that if you already live in a single family, house hacking is going to be extremely hard to do. I had some clients who were like, we're looking for a single or a multi. And I'm like, if you're going to house hack, you need to do it first, because you're never going to want to move out of your single. You're just not going to want to do it. So I guess my advice to someone in a single already would be, if you're able to downsize some of your life, and it doesn't mean your unit is necessarily smaller, but it means, you might not have the big yard or the garage or something else that you really like, and you're, living with your tenants. Then do it. If you live in a single and you're just not willing to give that up, you need to just save for the down payment. But no, we didn't buy any of the, the big investments in cash. We've done a couple flips and stuff like that, but, a lot less money than what the multis were.
Yeah, sure. And I think there's a theme here when people are, when people are investing in their kind of growing that portfolio and everything like that. Common theme, and it's like I talked to other guests about it, but it's that, sort of willingness to sacrifice and willingness to be creative, right? So sure, you didn't want to move to that studio apartment, but that's what that's what made the most sense at that time to get yourselves, kind of up another rung on that ladder. Mm-hmm. And, talking about doing house hacking and not wanting to go backwards. It's true. People don't want to, but people do it, right? If people do it because they want, what do you want more? There's that common thing that you hear that people say, like, being poor is hard, being rich is hard, getting rich is hard, choose your hard. Right. So it's like, it's all going to be, there's no easy road. And so, kind of, you have to figure out very clearly, what do you want? What's the end goal? And then what sacrifices do I need to get there? And how can I be creative about it? What other things can I add into this to speed up that process? Right. Like you said, we had to make more money in the business. Like you said that, like, it's just we just make more money in this, like, whatever. Right. But people don't realize that that's not a hard thing to do if you focus on it. Right. You're like, how do I grow my business? You focus on growing your business. You decide that's what I'm going to do. So, and
Dave Ramsey is one of his quotes is like, live like no one else now, so you can live like no one else tomorrow, or, in the future. I think a big piece that was helpful to me, that, and now that you say this might be helpful to other people, is the studio decision from going even from the 3-bed unit to the studio with the pets and the kid, was like, I had a time constraint to it. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was just like, we need to be the hell out of here. And I think that was really helpful, because it's like, I knew that in the course of under 4 or 5 months, we'd be somewhere else. So it was like, I just have to do this thing and live this way. And if I have a couple pieces of luggage sitting in the living room for the next 2 months, then it is, because all my stuff's on a porch somewhere, or in a basement somewhere, or, in a back hallway somewhere in my building. So having a time period on that. So if someone were to house hack or something, like, okay, we'll stay here for 6 to 9 months, or, anything less than a year, and then we'll find something else, or, rent our house for a little while we house hack, and things like that. I think that there's options, that having that time period, like a fixed time period of saying we need to be out of here before, that not only gives you a mental like countdown, but also gives you motivation to move out and figure it out. We feel like we need to be here less than a year. What's our next investment? Or, can we move back home? Can we rent the house? Like it gives you, no one, what is it? You can't have a cleaner house than when someone's coming over. Like if someone's coming over, suddenly the house is magically clean, because you have a deadline. So giving yourself a deadline, and a hard one, even if it means, meeting tenants and signing a lease. Like, that lease starts August 1st. So we need to figure something out, because someone's paying me to be here now. And giving yourself some of those restrictions, if you will, that kind of make you move faster.
Yeah, no, I mean, really great points. And I think it's just, if you put a time frame on it, that's going to, sort of force your hand. And also then just like that willingness to get creative, figure out what you're going to do, to make it work. It's like, I mean, we're sort of working through the similar thing in our house. Like we live in Los Angeles, like, unless you're uber rich, houses are small, right? It's just like, in Massachusetts is a similarly priced market. It's not like, it's not cheap there either, but we now have a almost 1-year-old daughter. So now we have 2 kids, and they're in their own rooms, and now we don't have a guest room. And it's like, so you start to, at first you're like, well, now we can't have guests. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, we can have guests, right? Maybe that's okay. But like, also, what could we do? We're going to get a pull-out couch. Like, you just like, there are ways to figure it out. And it's like, people aren't coming, like, if you get past like I said before, like, if you get past that, like, I need to show off to them when they come visit. They're not coming to visit to see how big my house is.
Right.
Like, they're coming to visit to see us. They're really coming to visit to see my kids. And then that's worth the trip. Like, that's what's exciting.
The inconvenience of it, right? Like,
it
doesn't have to be the most convenient thing. Like, you don't have to have a bed set up all the time. Like, use a pull-out couch. Just like we had our, for a little bit when we were living in that studio, I was like, oh my God, our sitter's going to come over and like, be like, what are you guys doing? Like, the first morning we woke up, I was like, our kid just like threw on, oh my God, what is it? Like Clash of the Titans, like the early 2000s version where the scorpions are coming or whatever. Yeah. And I hear him like watching TV. I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm like, wait, I'm in bed and I can see the TV. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in a hotel. So then I went with that mentality for a little bit. Like, we're just staying in a hotel, like, cause it was wicked temporary. Like, we knew it was temporary. So like, let's just, and our kid thought it was super cool. And, so we kind of went with it, but there were days where I was like, I would like to go somewhere with the door closed and like not see or hear anyone. And like, there's a bathroom and with a shower. And that was about the only room with the door, or the only room with the door. So, didn't get a whole lot of that, but, kind of changing your mentality around that.
And guess what? The kids don't want more space.
No,
they don't
want to be in your
they don't want a bigger house. They don't want a bigger house. Like they don't want to be farther from you. Like it's like, right. I'm sure that like my kids would love it if we were all in the same room. Like they'd be like, this is amazing, and it's just like, and so it's just, getting past what you're perceiving that maybe other people think, I think is a big part of it. And then you can really, achieve those goals even faster. I think it just, I love kind of your story of all the things, that I'm sure weren't necessarily convenient or comfortable or, exactly what you put on a, my dream life, list, but now, you work through that now, like you've got rental properties, like your cash flowing, you things are happening that will only grow and get better and make your lives better. And it doesn't take 50 years. It takes like you dug out from a negative hole in a few years. Like it doesn't take forever if you make the commitment to do it. And that's what I think people don't, I don't know, just like an unwillingness to make those sacrifices for a little while to get what you say you want.
Our foreclosure was less than 10 years ago. So, I mean, there's a code, I don't know whose it is, so it's not mine. You can be anywhere you want to be in 5 years. Like, your life can be dramatically different. I would even go as far as to say your life can be dramatically different in a year. And I mean that in good or bad. I mean, when we went from from when the notices started being foreclosed on was like less than a year and a half. I mean, going from things are great, everything's getting paid, everyone's making money, everyone's going out to eat and, buying bottles of wine, like whatever, to, maybe sneaking over to his mom's house to have dinner on Sunday night, or, driving home on E because you don't get paid till midnight, or, I was at the grocery store one day. I don't even know why he was home, and because he had a weird schedule where he was before. And I was at the grocery store and my card gets declined. I'm like, okay, cool. That's the worst feeling. I mean, there's people behind you. It's the worst feeling. Yeah. And it's embarrassing. And there's so many people going through financial hardships. So frankly, I'm not sure why we don't talk about it more. We are not the only people that have been died. I don't know anyone else been sued, but, not the first people to get foreclosed on or try to short sale and have the bank say, screw you, we're not going to do that. They wouldn't do a deed in lieu. I won't even mention the bank because they're the worst and I hope to never come across them again. But we don't talk about it enough. And so my card gets declined and I'm like, shoot. So I try a different card and like, I think I had 3 cards in my bag and they all got declined. I'm at the store and I'm like, oh my God. So I called Justin. I'm like, are you home? And he's like, yeah, what's up? I'm like, all my cards got declined. Like I'm sitting here with my stuff bagged and I can't pay. And for some reason, and neither one of us actually know why, there was a $100 bill sitting in the safe. Neither one of us know why it was there, or we really don't recall. And he happened to be home and shouldn't have been home, and brought the thing, paid for the food, and we left. And we don't have any idea how that. Yeah, I don't believe it magically appeared, but neither one of us remember why it was there. So saved the day, and I'm not sure I had to deal with any other declines after that. So we're very much mindful of them and what was on them, but. Yeah, we should talk about it more. And it's really partly why we started the nonprofit that we have and why we teach Financial Peace University and, help out. We work with the Boys and Girls Club and Nativity School and things like that in the city and help around Thanksgiving and Christmas and holidays when people are kind of struggling. So that was kind of a silver lining for us to be able to help other people and kind of pay it forward and use a little bit of, charity and Dave Ramsey and a little bit of like Tony Robbins basket brigade thrown in there and, try to help people and do what we can when we can.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a really good transition to where I will ask you the questions that I ask each guest, because I feel like this is probably going to be encompassed here. The first question is always related to the name of the show, being Know Your Why, and that is, what is your why? What drives you? I'm imagining some of what you just spoke about is a big part of it, but maybe if you want to elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I still struggle with why. So I enjoy helping people in a lot of capacities, whether I'm helping first-time buyers and really educating them, and they thank me a million times for answering their million questions. And I'm really just excited to help people and help them learn and consult them through the process. And I am driven to help people, whether it's bringing food over to the Boys and Girls Club, or one year we replaced all of the Boys and Girls Club boxing equipment because they have a boxing team. I don't really know if that's what it's called, but like a team, if you will. And there's some local celebrity boxers that work with them. And, they're like, oh, we're in need of new equipment. And we found out the dollar value and what we had in the account for the nonprofit. And we're like, we can do this. Like, we can buy all new. So we actually bought all new equipment, and kind of tears me up just talking about it. But, we walk in and all the kids are like, oh my God, this is all new stuff. Like, they got new everything. Even if you walk into their space and you're like, wow, this is not like where the place that I would have grown up in or spent a lot of time in. But
right.
These kids are like, we're going to the Boys and Girls Club because they, it helps them not be on the street and not contribute to bad behavior. So that's been really rewarding. We actually got to go to one of the fights in the park, like at the ring and stuff. They had a big charity event. So we got front row. We're sitting in the front row and this is super cool, whatever, watching these teenagers do this and the celebrities and stuff. And then they call us up on the ring to give us some award for buying their equipment. And I'm like, I don't want to be in the newspaper. I just want to come and hang out. But that was super cool. And a big surprise, we got this plaque and stuff for helping out, because it's the Worcester PD is involved with them too, hardcore the SWAT and stuff. So giving back is a big piece. I still, on a day-to-day, what am I doing? Why am I working so hard? So I still think I struggle with my why a lot. Some of it is my family and generating generational wealth and being able to help our son do that. And he's probably 5. He's walking around the properties and unprompted says to us, someday these could all be mine as long as I work hard enough. And I'm like, oh my God, we're doing something right. Something's going well. Yep. So some of it is driven by him and then want and need for him to have a life that, I wouldn't say either one of us had. We didn't grow up extremely poor or anything like that, but we weren't, really well off by any means. Our parents had their own struggles. And so I think there's some pros and cons that sometimes I see him where he's like, oh, just go get another one. And I'm like, I need to stop buying things when something breaks, because he thinks that it's just for him, it's just a revolving door of we'll just get another one. And I'm like, well, we don't do that, but because we have properties and we have people we have to help and, things like that. So it's a fine line, I think, between spoiling and trying to teach them a lesson. And I think we have lessons we've learned that weren't because anyone taught them to us. It's just a byproduct of growing up a certain way. So my why, it would be partly him, partly us, partly wanting to travel more and do things that, we wouldn't have been able to do as kids. We've taken him to Disney a couple of times and taken him on a cruise and some trips and things like that weren't options for us as kids. And then part of our why is just helping other people and running the nonprofit and helping other people become debt free, even if it doesn't turn into investments and future, cash flow opportunities, just helping people get out of the rat race, if you will. If you've played the cash flow game, but there's a rat race in the middle of, you're going to hit with a medical bill and then you're set back, and then, you can't pay this now because, your electricity went up this month, or, and getting out of the mindset of everything's just hitting you wrong and you have to work your 9 to 5 to get your paycheck, to pay your bills, to work again, to pay your bills, and, the week to week. So that's, part of the why as well, helping people just get out of that. And I do think there is, even if it's stressful, helping people in their real estate when they're potentially having a really hard time or about to miss payments or missing payments. We were sitting at an appointment with a woman who we've tried helping. I think she's one of those people that kind of got pulled down and is kind of stuck there and isn't willing to listen right now. I don't think that that's a forever answer for her, but right now she's just so stuck and so overwhelmed that she's not listening. But sitting there listening to her about missing payments or paying for her kid's college and trying to stay in town to be with him, but she could move a few hours away to be with family and spend less money, but then she wouldn't see her kid as much. And, just seeing her break down and, feeling like she had the safe space to do that. I think there's some reward in that, even if those appointments are hard, there's definitely times you're sitting there and be like, an average person going in there just trying to get commission with zero empathy and zero having gone through it yourself in a slightly different way. I didn't have a college kid doing it and trying to move away, but just being able to sit there and feel like a client felt like they had the safe space to do that was hugely beneficial. She didn't end up selling. She might, but she's referred other people to us. So I think I feel like that says something that we weren't able to actually help her yet. But she felt comfortable enough to send us someone else we could help. So I think that's been huge for us. And it makes me feel good that people can feel safe to have those conversations with us.
I don't think that you struggle with your why at all. I think that
maybe it's on a day to day of just like, why is hard? Why?
It's hard because it's hard to be successful, but just back to choosing your hard, but I don't think there's any lack of motivation behind what you're doing. So I love it. Second question, far more lighthearted, but tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, some, maybe a special skill or hobby or something that you like to do, that you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So for, when I was a kid, I used to dance. And so I had a friend who opened a studio as an adult. And so I actually, tap danced with her for, 5 years. I was in her recital. I was like the only adult in the first one. So it's kind of a fun fact. I think it might be on our website, but it is kind of a fun fact. And I have a platform in my basement, so I need to probably get back to it. But that's a little awesome. Bit of a fun fact.
That's really, really cool. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, Alicia, what's the best way? And we'll put whatever you want in the show notes.
Yeah. So a lot of different ways. I have I think I gave you the two websites. So the nonprofit website and our business website would be the easiest ways. No matter which way you fill out and whichever email gets that submission, I'm in all of them. So whether you send a note to the nonprofit, for help or something like that, like I'd be the one answering. If you send it to our main, thing, I'm in there too. So I'd say the website, my email, if the email that you have is fine. That's an easy way to get in touch with me. And then I'm personally on Facebook. My business is on Facebook. I'm personally on Instagram. My business is on Instagram. So we're pretty socially out there as well. So kind of any which way. I just won't give my cell phone over the air, but
that's fine. You're under no obligation to give out your cell phone number. That's totally fine. Awesome. Final question for you. What piece of advice would you give to people that are, maybe they're going through a time like you did, that struggle? What would you tell them to help get them through it and help come out on the other side, successfully as you have?
So I like to always say, if it's not better, it's not over. I used to do it a lot to myself, like it still really sucks, and you kind of live in the suck and you try not to, but you don't want to, but you are, and it sucks. But if it doesn't feel better yet, it's not over yet. And that I really, that's helped me through a lot. So if you're kind of feeling like down and like it doesn't seem to be any better, well, it's going to get better. So it's got to either be better or over. And so I used to joke too that, I might feel light at the end of the tunnel, but I think it's a train, not the end of the tunnel. So that's not as heartwarming, but I would say, like, if it's not better, it's not over, and it will get better.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it goes along with the whole, like, you don't fail until you quit. Yeah. Right. There are going to be highs and lows. There are going to be setbacks, but as long as you keep going, then you haven't failed, you haven't lost, you whatever word you want to put on it to give it finality. That hasn't happened unless you quit. So you just keep pushing forward. So thank you so much. This was awesome.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.